Does Israel have nuclear weapons?
I don't know. I've never been invited to Dimona or wherever they stockpile them.
Why is it the world has no idea how many Israel has?
Israel has always had a policy of ambiguity in relation to the nuclear weapons.
Well, Benny Morris is an odd bird. He says one thing and then he says another thing. He's like Quicksilver. It's very hard to pin him down.
Assuring that Iran would abide by anything it committed itself to would be a real problem. Iran has cheated every UN body.
Isn't this a classic case of the kettle calling the coffee pot black? For you to say we can't trust Iran after Israel's record on nuclear weapons, as even you so shamefacedly and shamelessly say, I don't know if Israel has nuclear weapons. You really don't?
Can I just ask you, Benny Morris, does Israel have nuclear weapons?
I don't know. I've never been invited to Dimona or wherever they stockpile them, so I don't know. But most Western intelligence agencies says Israel has a nuclear stockpile. They say Israel has at least 200 nuclear weapons, and I assume they know what they're talking about.
But we know exactly how many nuclear weapons the United States has, Russia has, China has, the UK has. Why is it the world has no idea how many Israel has? And why is it when I asked Netanyahu directly that question, he refused to answer?
Because Israel has always had a policy of ambiguity in relation to the nuclear weapons. Israel believed that so long as it didn't announce that it possesses nuclear weapons, it wouldn't provoke other countries around to try and possess them themselves. Ambiguity was seen as the best policy.
Sort of casually saying that it may have as many as 200 nuclear weapons. I've certainly never heard that from any member of the Israeli government. They refuse to even acknowledge they have one.
Well, Benny Morris is an odd bird. I'm using a euphemism there because he says one thing and then he says another thing. He's like Quicksilver. It's very hard to pin him down. Let's move to what Benny Morris just had to say. In case your listeners are unaware, there's a nuclear weapon-free zone in Latin America. There's a nuclear weapons-free zone in Africa. There's a nuclear weapons-free zone in the South Pacific. And there has been a strong advocacy because of the dangers of a nuclear war in the Middle East to turn the Middle East into a nuclear weapons-free zone. The last vote was taken in the UN General Assembly in December 2022. It was a very close vote, very close. The vote was 175 states, including Iran, in favor of a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East, 1 against Israel, and 2 abstentions, Singapore and the United States. So I think there's a very real danger of a nuclear escalation in the Middle East because Israel is, as the New York Times called it this past week, they called Israel a rogue state. That's the euphemism for a lunatic state. Israel is a lunatic state. It has Iran in its crosshairs. It's determined to escalate, ratchet up the provocations until it could force the U.S. into the war with Iran, or, in Benny Morris's alternative, to use nuclear weapons, non-conventional weapons in Iran.
Benny Morris, your chance to respond.
Yeah, I actually agree with Norman that the Middle East should be and should become a nuclear-free zone. The problem is that assuring that Iran would abide by anything it committed itself to would be a real problem. Iran has cheated every UN body which has looked at its nuclear project. It's cheated about almost everything it does. It's a regime of lies which one cannot expect to tell the truth. And therefore, Israel can't depend on a promise by Iran that it won't develop nuclear weapons.
Let's just take the last point that Benny Morris made, and then I'll return to your major point. The last point Benny Morris made, for a surprising change, we agreed on a point. He said he too supports a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East. However, he said that we can't trust Iran, that it's a conniving, cheating, deceptive, and so forth regime. so we can't trust it that it won't build a nuclear weapon. Now, I find that coming from an Israeli a very odd statement, because Professor Morris must know that it was through deception, conniving, deceiving, espionage, spying, and all sorts of other things that Israel created its nuclear weapons force. He has for sure read Avner Cohen's book on how the bomb was created, how Israel acquired nuclear weapons. Professor Morris, according to Avner Cohen, was it by being honest? Was it by being above board? Was it by allowing inspectors to see what Israel was doing in Dimona? Is that what happened, Professor Morris? So isn't this a classic case of the kettle calling the coffee pot black? For you to say we can't trust Iran after Israel's record on nuclear weapons, as even you so shamefacedly and shamelessly say, I don't know if Israel has nuclear weapons. You really don't? You advocate Israel's use of them in the event that the U.S. doesn't join the attack on Iran, but then you don't know if Israel has nuclear weapons. You're such a shameless liar, which is a sad fact. I spend many a week